the ones we are focusing on are actually the wrong people, the old people with old ideas. I'm sure out here, the youth, the Gen Zs, the millennials have realized that this tribal politics is not helping. And probably they're just silent, they're not speaking. But when the right time comes, those are the people who are going to give directions once they register as voters. Okay.
Nudin, a lot of people are, you know, coming together, you know, trying to see whether they can actually, because, and I believe the Gen Z, that particular faction, is actually one that a lot of politicians are seemingly, you know, endearing themselves towards. Which, from the people that you've been able to see, you know, presenting themselves and trying to say they are the people that could actually rival the president in 2027, which one do you feel will be a team that could actually carry the day?
I don't think we've seen teams yet. We've just seen interests. We've seen Kiomtata saying that he would like to be a president, and there are those who bashed him. You wonder why are you bashing him? If you don't support him, so you move along with your things. Go away. You know, it doesn't make sense. Everyone has a right. So long as you meet the criteria in Article 137(1) of the Constitution, you can vie for president. There's no problem. And if you do not associate yourself with my ideas, it's our get your next person to vote for you without having to disparage or disregard my intentions to vie. I do believe that we're yet to see any coalition moving forward, because I think people are actually talking. As she rightfully says, there's no single time that you have a community in power. I'll tell you for free, because right now, let me ask you, the problems that we're facing as a country, calling someone in Elgeyo Marakwet, your Singishu, they don't face the same things. Is there a petrol station for someone in government and someone in opposition? Are there schools for government and opposition? Is there a supermarket for government and opposition? So we are all in the same pot. Okay. And if we move away from that tribal cocoon, we'll have a better country. But it is hard to expect the old guard to move away from that, because that is all they know. They know that, you know, these Kenyans, the moment you want to panga them, just throw them under tribal lines. And you see, that is the oldest trick in the book. When you remember the colonialists, divide and rule. That is it. So come before elections, those 5 years, Akamau, Otieno, Amasai, and whatever, they live together. They even married together. Okay. But when an election comes, someone reminds you of your tribe. Just because I want to whip emotion and tell you, by the way, this our tomatoes were. We're always in the cold. It's time for us to go and eat. There's no single time a community will be in power. It is only that president, his cronies, and allies. Okay. Because, and if they don't work, that same community that is in quote unquote in power, they suffer. And you see people end up mocking them. And that is sad reality. So
okay, are you likely to move away from that, from the look of things?
Away from those old guards. But if you expect them to change that, they'll never change that. Remember, most of these people are kind of old boys, man. There is no way they'll move away from what they were taught. That is what they were taught. That was their political teaching, that divide and rule. Emancipate them, make sure, impoverish them to use them. That is why you have videos of someone who is a professor somewhere with a book on professional ethics and you know 200 shillings. It's so sad when you see such things. So you don't expect those old guards to change. It's only for the young people to decide to want a different path from that. Okay. But if you allow yourselves to be used as tools, when Gachagua needs to act like, oh, Nateswa, remember when they were bosom buddies, the president never came to you. But now because they're not together, he'll come and say, oh, you guys, this is happening to me. Whip emotions for sympathy. Okay. And you have a president now who will go to Kisumu and tell you guys, you know what, by the way, tumeamua hakuna ukabila. That is very hypocritical, because when you look at appointments, when you check names, as Kalonzo would say, your name betrays you. So who are you lying to? You see, it can't be that the fact that you and now Raila are now in a bread-based government, all of a sudden you've become nationalistic and patriotic. We have to be honest as Kenyans and move away from this hypocritical old guard way of doing things. And that only happens when the young people decide that politics and elections are important. And why? Because they determine your next 5 years. If you say voting is boring, it's a waste of my time, I can't queue for an hour or two in the morning, then believe you me that the next 5 years you'll be back on X, Facebook or Instagram, lamenting and saying reject and saying X and X must go. Okay.
Go ahead.
I want to ask you this question, even if you respond to some of the things that have been raised by Justina and of course Nudi here. What will be a threat to President William Ruto?
What will be?
A, a threat in terms of political formations?
I'm not very sure we can have a political formation that will be a threat, because the terrain we are walking today, we have walked it before. There was once upon a time here that Kenyans went against Kibaki, and they were saying it is going to be 41 against 42, and he still retained his presidency. And I have seen a lot of wishful thinking, oh, Kamba will join Gema and such things. Those are things that the people who are anti the president would wish to happen to take the president out of office. But I heard the young man talk about when you check names, the name betrays you. It is only names that are published that people know. There was a list going around Kenya some times back of the president's community in government, but they did not publish a counter list of the other communities in government. You see, political competition must be comparative. It was not until the names of people who are working in regard this office were published when we knew they all almost came from one constituency. It is necessary that when you want to accuse anybody of anything, especially in matters tribalism, publish names of all communities so that we see who is where. But you see, in this country, when you publish 200 names of people from the same community in government, when you have not published the other ones who are in government, 600 of them. Because you see, people don't even know in this country there are 350 parastatols. And you see, when you want to publish names of one community, you go where that community is the MD, it's only the MD you publish, you leave the chair. Where the other community's chair, it's only the chair you publish, you leave the MD. Some places they even do the corporation secretaries or the chief accountants, and then the list looks very long. And because Kenyans have no other list to compare it with, they say, oh, this country is only run by one community. Let's be fair and honest. But again, this thing of saying when there's no community that is in power, it is an individual which is in power. Let me tell you, people just talk, but nobody even reminds them of their community during election. It is them who reminds themselves. Nobody even goes to Luoland to tell the Luo that Raila is a candidate, now vote for him. They will just vote. Nobody even goes to Mount Kenya and tells them your person is on the seat, just vote for him. When they were voting for Uhuru, they voted to the last man. When they were voting for Kibaki, they voted to the last man. And when they were voting the last time, they voted to the last man except a few. So Kenya is still largely tribal. We can fight that. But to come and say that now we have switched like it was an electric light switch is not going to work. So when you are planning your politics...
How long will it take to fight that tribal?
It will take generation changeover. But even this generation, you know what my friend is forgetting, that the Gen Zs who think like him are not even 5%. Walk into these villages like what you saw in Kiambu. Don't you see those people throwing chairs were largely Gen Zs? Why were they not thinking like him? Don't judge the society by your standards. Your standard is too high to judge the society with it. Those Gen Zs are still living with those octogenarian mothers, grandfathers of theirs, and they listen every day. In fact, in the mountain, they can dismiss you until when children are playing football, they are singing, say, Ruto must go, or Moi must go, or Raila is a devil. They sing as they play football, as they go. So, it is not a task you are going to win so soon.
Okay, okay. We were hoping that maybe it will not take that much time when it comes to moving away from the tribal politics. And they say the young generation has come out and showed us a different thing. But listening to what Owidi is saying, seems like what we are presenting, what you're presenting and Udini is presenting is a wishful thinking.
Remember, we is in that 22% I mentioned, the old people. So we excuse him for saying that. But my view is that we are moving into that direction. I can assure you, the Kenyans who may be, like if my parents were brought up in the mountain, I did not go to school in the mountain. I went to school in Nairobi. So there are many of us who think the way I'm thinking beyond the tribal lines. So in his view, maybe we are not in the right direction. But from where I sit, the age mates and people who have interacted with over time, we have come to realize that it is the ideas, it is the solutions, it is is the alternatives that will get us moving. Remember when even this government came into power, the idea was that dynasty ni mbaya. That was what they were pushing. So if they lived to the cause, if they lived to the movement, people would not have felt that they were being betrayed. But as it ended up, they also became another dynasty. So I think we should look at concrete solutions. If the doctors are saying we want salaries, the government is saying there is no money, where can we create the revenue to pay the doctors? How can we arrange or structure government to separate that the government is the regulator, the government is the owner of infrastructure, the government is paying salaries? That is too much work. And again, remember, we need to absorb the population that is outside, that is unemployed. So the ideas will carry the day. That is now what we are seeing, considering 78% of the country are young people. For the old guys, it will take a long time.
I want us to transition to something else, and this has to do with the IEBC reconstitution. And of course, Hussein yesterday appeared before Parliament and said, of course, they are in a crisis as far as conducting elections is concerned. And by elections, of course, we have about 3 constituencies and several wards that do not have representatives at the moment because we've not reconstituted the IEBC. It has been surviving without commissioners for about a year now. I don't know. Let me start with you. We're looking at a crisis, and is there political goodwill when it comes to reconstituting of the IEBC?
First and foremost, it is unfortunate that we find ourselves in this situation because you have a scenario where you have constituencies that don't have MPs. There are some MCAs who have passed away, and those people are lacking representation. That in itself is an infringement of their rights, all right? And we're in this stumbling block because of political players who want to decide the referee, the manager, and the players. And they want to be all these 3 things at the same time. So you want to compose the next IEBC and then make sure that you have your own people inside there. So that once elections are announced, you have another charter for somewhere said, oh, by the way, we do not align with this. And that is the problem. You cannot be a player and the referee and the manager and the owner of the club at the same time. So unless this political interference is removed, we'll have ourselves in this situation. So I do feel that, yes, there's no goodwill. Because also remember, once you have IEBC, you remember people were talking about recalling some members of parliament. So you have a scenario where that if it happens, then it won't be too nice for someone somewhere. So I do believe that there is no political goodwill. There is a court case currently because of the names that were forwarded. There are those who feel that the ones who took the case there, they feel that those names as they are, they feel left out. And that is my problem because, again, I tell you, political interference. And the day that we dissociate the commissioners of IEBC from having an inclination or sympathy to a certain political divide is the day IEBC will really be independent. Because that eye is silent until that happens. We cannot say it's independent because we give it funds. Look at this scenario. We are 2 years into this administration. We're supposed to be planning 2027, right? You haven't planned. And remember, the last elections, Chebukati was crying for money up towards the election. The election here, you're still asking for money. So we bungle elections and end up having a scenario where Kakamega and Mombasa had issues as to the ballot papers. Why? Because money was given late to IEBC. And so I do believe that we plan our elections, it's like we plan these elections to fail, or we plan them in a scenario where someone has a certain desire that they attain so long as IEBC is not properly functioning. And I do believe that that is the political class. Because you and I
seem not to be learning from experience in the past so that we get to have IEBC in place on time. And I want to, Article 89 of the Constitution provides that IEBC shall review names and boundaries of constituencies at intervals of not less than 8 years and not more than 12 years. Now, the last review was in March 2012. And the latest date for the next review was to be March 2024. We are past that particular deadline. What does that speak to this right now?
Don't forget, don't forget as you read it, the review should not happen. It should be 12 months prior to an election. So if it is 12 months into an election, it means those boundaries won't exist in that election. You get, if you read the Article 89 properly, carry on.
I think we need to also look at the political history since elections. Immediately after the elections, we were in the streets for a very long time, demanding reforms for IEBC, demanding reforms on how the commissioners are appointed, and the government had to wait. And then came up the so-called, that famous thing, what was it called?
NADCO.
And then when they were now ready to appoint, we are in court. But we are forgetting that in the last general election, we had lost rules for appointing IEBC commissioners, and they were used successfully by President Uhuru Kenyatta and his brother Raila Odinga, and they brought in the Cherera 4 without President William Ruto, who was then going to compete against them, complaining. But when now the ball is on the other foot, now there's complaint, oh, we need fairness, we need inclusion, we need the rules to be changed. So I think we cannot keep on blaming the president for everything that goes wrong, even when it is us who makes them go wrong. There is definitely an organized group sitting out somewhere, meeting on a regular basis, planning on how to establish this government, to make it not work. But I think sooner or later, they will have to be smoked out. Okay. Because you can't, everything that the government tries to do, you go to court. This is the country where everybody wants salaries to be increased, they want things to be, promises to be met, but they don't want taxes to be paid. How is it going to be? We cannot have a country where people wake up every morning, especially the media. And there is a media house in this country that broadcast in several languages, and each of those broadcasting languages, there is a team once a week that its job is to castigate, is to criticize what the government is doing, however bad. And that those groups are formed by journalists working in that media house or some borrowed from elsewhere. And their job is to criticize the government throughout.
Criticizing the government, is it not the media's job though?
It is good, but you are also supposed to disseminate good information. You see, when you sit 2 hours at night, everything the government do, even things that the government has no hand in, it is criticism, criticism until the end. Isn't it also necessary to be patriotic and say, at least the government finally, you see now, the so-called SHA is now working. They have stopped talking about it. Encourage people now to use it. Encourage people now that actually the government meant well. But here, I think the people who are letting us down most is the media, not even the people they are reporting.
Are we supposed to thank the government for doing its job? Because when elected, with some of the things that they promised, that's exactly what they're supposed to do. I am not saying you thank. I'm more saying you spread the information. You see, if your primary job is informative, inform the country. Don't give them your opinion all the time. We also have our opinions. But when the media forms a team, a gang, and this gang, its job is to besmirch the name of the president and his government. Right. It can't work like that. Justina, are we looking at a crisis when it comes to the reconstitution of the IEBC?
Yes, we are, because due to the lack of political goodwill. But let me blame, I will not blame the president. Let me blame the scarcity of opportunities in this country. For those people in power, they are so worried that if I lose power, I'll go back to be an ordinary Kenyan. There are no jobs, there are no opportunities, there is no money. So when they are there, they feel very cushioned there. They want to protect status quo. And possibly that is where there is the sabotage in the IEBC. But again, I don't know where the selection committee has reached, because we had been told Azimio had failed to select their member. Now that they selected, where has the selection committee reached? But I want to challenge this country, and I want to challenge everyone in power, including even us who are not. What are these ideas that will ensure that there is scarcity, there is influx or more opportunities for Kenyans? Because the only sector that is working in this country is politics. All other sectors have failed. There is no money in any other sector. So all of us are competing to be in politics, so that at least we can have some income, we can have some stability in life in terms of finances. So all that goes back to the delivery. Are the ordinary Kenyans comfortable where they are, or they have to come into politics? And then the more demand there is for political positions, the more there is gatekeeping, there's the more of sabotage, lack of transparency. So the challenge goes back to economic democracy and freedom. That is why we should at least have, if you are a swimmer and you swim every day, you're a coach, that is your main hustle, not your side hustle, then you'll have no business to run into politics, because you're pursuing your passion. But as it is, all of us, whether you're a swimmer, whether you're who, all of us are running into politics, so that at least we can have that cushioning. Okay.
I want us, because just still on you, we've not been able to use history properly when it comes to judging exactly how we get into an election. Because when it comes to the issue of IEBC, mostly it's very contentious when it comes into an election. You know, different sides of the political divide having a different opinion and feeling shortchanged at the end of the day. And in most cases, this is normally because we get to, you know, have a commission at the tail end of, you know, when we are getting to start now conducting elections. We had an opportunity to do better this time round. We are not doing that.
And I think that is why that failure is used by opposition most of the time to say the elections were stolen. But from the vantage point I sat last time, I can assure Kenyans that where I sit, I saw the whole process from the polling station and everything that was going on, including the Maina K case. So this government in place won fair and square. That is something we must agree. Where we don't agree is the delivery. But I want this government today to realize that as long as Kenyans believed, despite the fact that they were told that they stole, servers were not open, this was the time for them to prove that we are doing everything right, matters IBC, so that we don't open that window for someone else to run again to court and then we are told elections were stolen. Because up to now, the people who believe that this government did not win fair and square. So this was the opportunity for them. It may not be the president's fault because they did the NADCO, but where is this bottleneck? It needs to be unclogged so that we move fast into ensuring IBC is in place, ensuring that we are preparing for 2027, ensuring that people are registering as voters. Remember now the Gen Z thing that came up, Kenyans are now saying, oh, they are stalling IBC because they don't want to register Gen Zs. So I think it is the burden of proof is on this government to ensure that they push everything, they unblock all bottlenecks to ensure that IBC is in place so that at least they are seen somewhat that they're supporting democracy.
Okay. Yeah, one last question before I take a break. You were in the last, of course, election. You were actually vying that. Why do you believe the government won fair and square, yet some of the people that were with you on the ballot paper feel a different thing?
Remember, there were old people who were with me on the ballot. I was the youngest. These old people have refused to acknowledge that when you go to vote that day, the people that lie that day, that polling center, because that queue is like a polling station there are only 700. Those 700 ballot papers are counted, they are entered on the form 34A. It is transmitted to Bomas. When they were bringing issues that Camargo intercepted, I always ask the question, if I take a photo of you now, where is there a Camargo behind the photo? So the old people, the people on the ballot were old people who are just using old tactics to say that the election was stolen. But over time, the strides have been made. The Maina K case really revolutionized how the election is done. It was just an issue of people accepting that we lost fair and square, but there was no issue of Camargo. So I think the age again, generational difference is what is ailing this country.
Right. We take a break here, and of course when we come back we'll be taking a look at what is happening as far as healthcare is concerned, with the KMPDU issuing a strike notice saying they're going to be announcing that tomorrow during their national delegates conference here in Nairobi at Safari Park Hotel, where they're going to be announcing that they'll be going on strike beginning the 1st of December. When we come back, we'll be taking a look at that, whether the country is a striking nation, considering the fact that also the Dons rather are actually on strike as we speak at the moment, and yet people are supposed to be continuing with their studies. All right, we come back in a